Welcome back, bass anglers. It's summertime and there is one lure that is probably more effective than most others and is a must-have in your bass fishing arsenal. It needs to be set up on your deck. We're going to talk about that today. So there are some subtleties to using a Senko, and we're going to talk about that today. They are a great skipping bait to use for suspended fish. And a lot of people miss that nuance in their dock fishing, and they're throwing tubes and jigs and other things, and even some folks will throw a Senko on a dock and they won't think about the specific situation that it's really being useful for. And the main use for it for me is checking for suspended fish under a dock. They want the cover and the shade of the dock, but the barometer's got them suspended. They're not down at the bottom of the corner of the dock posts or under the dock down on the bottom of the lake. They're suspended up around the edges of it, and they're either eating bluegills or they're taking cover and they're suspended because of the barometer. And you get the barometer in the 30s, up in the 30s, and those fish will be suspended. And you can throw a tube or a jig under a dock and it sinks fast and it goes right past them and you won't get bit and you think there's no fish there. And then if you throw a Senko up under there and let that thing slowly fall down in front of those suspended fish, they'll eat it and you'll catch fish. It happened to us in a recent tournament. We were fishing heavier baits under docks where we had previously caught fish, and we went through there and we thought there's no dock bite. Most of the field thought there was no dock bite, but the fish were suspended, and we were able to do the check to make sure we caught them by doing this system. So I'll show it to you. So I take a Senko. I've got a bulk pack. I always buy a bulk pack of Yamamoto Senkos here. I get the green pumpkin black, and then I do something special with them, and I'll show you this setup and the components I use for it to be effective skipping docks to check for those suspended fish. First thing I do is I use a silicone band, and I'll put on the link in the description below these things that I'm using, but some people will use like a rubber O-ring for their Senkos. I prefer to use these silicone bands. I've got a band tool right here that is used to stretch out that silicone band, right? And if I've got my Senko Setup here and I use my band tool, stretch my silicone band, and then put the skinny end of the Senko in, and then pull it to about the halfway point, right? And then drop that band on there, pull it off the edge of the tool, and there I've got my band. And I'll show you what I do with that band in a minute. So I band my Senko, and then the next thing I'm using on the business end of my setup, I'm using a VMC Redline drop shot hook. I'm not using a Senko hook or a wacky-rigged hook like they will in a lot of cases. I'm using the Redline super sharp, super strong, size 1 drop shot hook because it's small, super sharp. The Senko still fits in the slot nice. It's just a great hook. It doesn't get hung up. It's a lot of those other wacky-rigged hooks are just too big, and that thing's the perfect size. And what I do when I hook this thing up is I'm actually coming perpendicular through the band. I will poke straight through the center of the band like that, and then the fish aren't tearing that off. They can't pull that off, that silicone hook. So I can catch multiple fish. I can skip this thing up under docks, and the hook is small. It's not getting hung up on everything. Usually I have to get bit if I'm hanging up on anything. And then when the fish grab it, when you hook it up in this manner, when the fish grab it, they're actually getting the point in the upper part of their mouth when they grab onto that thing every time. So it's a great setup, a great hook, VMC Redline hook, deadly, but I'm using the drop shot hook and I'm using it in that silicone band. So I band them, and then the other thing that I'm using that adds a little touch to the green pumpkin black Senko that I'm using is I always put and stain the one end, the skinny end, the tip end of my Senko using Spikett's Dip and Glow in their garlic scent. And what this does is it gives a little bit of a target to the fish. It gives them that orange, that those suspended bluegills under the dock have this green pumpkin, black, and orange in them. And it just provides enough attractant and contrast with this bait that I think it gets me more bites than when I don't have it. I'll get bit when I don't have it, but I get more bites and more aggressive bites when I do have that. They can seek it out even in stained water. They can find that thing. So I always tip it. It's got a little bit of scent. This thing is falling very slowly, and they'll move over and examine it, and they get a little whiff of the scent and they're on it. Garlic scent has always been a successful scent for bass fishing, and it works for me, so I'm using Spike It. Be careful of this stuff. You can get it all over your boat, so have a container that you've got it in, or like I do, you can prepare a mess of them right beforehand, and then when you put them in your bulk pack, I band them and stain them, and so when they're sitting in my bulk pack, right, I can see which ones are ready to rock, and I'll make 15, 20 of them in here, banded and stained and ready to go, so that I don't have to mess with that procedure while I'm on the water. And so that I'm wacky rigging this with that hook. I've got these things pre-set up. So I'm using a spinning rod on this setup, and I'll wacky rig these, and I'm using a 15-pound braid, Reaction Tackle 15-pound braid in a high-vis yellow. And then I'll use their pink, Reaction Tackle's pink fluorocarbon leader line, and I'll use 12-pound or up leader line depending on the kinds of docks that I'm fishing. And I'll usually have that leader be from just above my reel, between the eye and the reel, all the way outside the rod to the bait. So I've got about, so maybe 12 feet of leader on there. And that pink fluorocarbon leader line is super abrasion resistant and super strong, and I've had tremendous success. I also start out at 12, which sounds light for some dock fishermen, but I've landed a whole limit of fish from under docks, under pontoon boats, starting out at 12-pound, and then if I'm around stuff that's gnarly and I get broken off, I'll go up from there. But I'll start at 12, super abrasion resistant. That pink fluorocarbon line is abrasion resistant, so it gives me a little extra advantage. And it's a good skipping system. You get your rod tip down by the water. I'll use a 7-foot medium action spinning rod, my 6-gill a Kilos spinning rod, and it there's a little bit of flexibility in the tip so that it bends a little bit to load up the Senko for the skip, get it down by the water, roll cast it, and this thing will just literally skip across the water, and you can shoot this thing with a little bit of practice right into some difficult openings between the engine and the pontoon boat, up under the back section of the dock that others aren't getting to. And then you just wait, let this thing fall subtly down. It does its shimmy action as it's weightless and falling down. It's got salt in it, so it will sink, but it's slow enough that those suspended fish get a look at it. It's not rocketing past them, and so it's a must try. So if you're a dock fisherman, you have to have this in your arsenal. You can have your jig, and you can have your tubes and your other dock fishing baits that are a little quicker reaction bites for fish, but when the going gets tough and the barometer's up in the 30s and the fish are suspended, you need to show them a Senko on a sunny, calm day under a dock, and you'll catch more fish. It'll make you successful when you haven't been. So give it a try. Hope that tip was helpful. Hope these tips were helpful. Please like and subscribe, and we'll talk to you next time on the water.